This is one of the most eaten salads in the entire world. You might have seen it before. Most of the world calls this a Russian salad, except for Russians and most of their neighbors who actually call it salat Olivier, a French name. And right there I'm thinking, hold on, there must be some kind of story, and spoiler alert, there is. I gathered every single piece of evidence I could find so we can try and recreate the original 150-year-old Russian salad recipe. But let's start at the beginning. Let me take you all the way back to 1860s Imperial Russia. The aristocrats of the rapidly growing city of Moscow are craving the foreign delicacies they have heard of or tried abroad. Not a whole lot of Russian chefs had those skills, and so a lot of European cooks make the journey all the way to Moscow to try their luck in the noble restaurants of the city or serving the ultra-rich as personal chefs. And one of these cooks was a young, probably French-Belgian dude named Lucien Oliver. Yes, it was this guy, except he was like 20 years old. This is the only picture we got. There's this amazing 1935 book about old Moscow and its people. In it you will find this whole chapter that describes how the young Olivier, while buying a bergamot tobacco, meets some rich guy and they end up opening a restaurant together. Super fancy pants, high-end French food, and they call it Hermitage Olivier. And look, for Olivier, he's in his mid-20s, so this is his big chance. The pressure is on. And aside from serving all the French restaurant classics, like all the ambitious chefs in Moscow, Olivier has to create his own signature dishes. But at this stage, Olivier has already been cooking for the ultra-rich in Moscow for quite a number of years, so he's pretty confident he knows exactly what they want. And lo and behold, his restaurant immediately blows up. It basically goes 1860s viral. Especially Olivier's signature salad and its secret sauce become an epic hit and remain so even beyond Olivier's untimely death in 1883. And so, of course, the question is, what was this amazing recipe Muscovites went crazy over around 1.5 centuries ago? According to urban lore, Olivier never shared the recipe and only prepared it by himself behind closed doors. There's hardly any information out there. If you go on Wikipedia, there's a very intriguing list of ingredients there that supposedly made up the original salad, but it has no source and it really doesn't seem to check out at all. So unfortunately, I call BS on that one. Plan B, let's look for some primary sources. In this book that we've mentioned before, there is some evidence of other restaurants trying to copy the recipe and even people trying to make it at home. So this dish definitely did not just remain in one restaurant. And indeed, in 1899, it pops up in a Russian cookbook for the very first time. Very, very promising. But there is an even earlier mention of the recipe in an 1894 issue of a food magazine called Nasha Pisha. This is where it gets interesting. The author claims to have eaten the original Olivier salad prepared by Olivier himself in 1882 and promises a detailed account of his experience. I think this is about as close as we will get. So let's make some OG Olivier salad. We're supposed to start out by pan frying and shredding a hazel grouse. What is a hazel grouse? Well, it's some type of Russian jungle chicken, and because of its nutrition, it's supposed to taste very gamey and foresty. So I went to the fanciest grocery store I know, and no, I did not find grouse, but I found quail. Look at it, it's so tiny, but don't let that fool you. It tastes a bit gamier than chicken, so I think it's a good candidate. Because of its size, I decided to poach rather than pan fry it, and to get that forest aroma, I added some woody smoked salt, fresh rosemary, bay leaves, and a couple of crushed juniper berries into my poaching liquid. In with my quails and simmer them on low for 15 minutes. Once they're cooled down, remove and roughly shred the meat, but I suggest keeping those tiny little drumsticks. We'll get to those later. Next, the recipe calls for cooked potatoes. And don't forget that in the 1860s, potatoes were still a novelty gourmet food in Russia, which is very difficult to imagine these days, I think. Another crucial ingredient is cucumber, and it's explicitly fresh cucumber. Pickles, which are very popular today, would only be used during winter time. But now we have arrived at our first major speed bump. Let me explain. What reportedly made Olivier's own Olivier salad unbeatable was the sauce. The recipe here suggests a mayo base with the addition of a sauce called soya Kabul. Don't look for this sauce in your local grocery store. The days where you could buy this are long gone. So we do have to make it ourselves, and this is where research gets really tricky. In Russian, soya means soy, and that's why most people believe that the closest you can get to the truth is this old Soviet bottle, specifically the ingredient list on the back of it, soy sauce being the most important. And I know it's called soya Kabul, but I believe this could be a false lead. Here's why. When you check a Russian dictionary from the mid or late 19th century, you will find that the word soya actually just refers to sauce in general, and it has nothing to do with soybeans at all. Even when you check that same old food magazine, Nasha Pisha, you will find a snippet where the author claims that pretty much anything produced in Russia is crap, and the only real Kabul sauce is the one produced by a British company named Cross and Blackwell. And of course we know that Olivier himself would only have used the most high-end ingredients available. So somewhat surprisingly, that company Cross and Blackwell is still around, but don't get excited, the sauce is not, and the company has been sold and resold many times. One Russian blogger still tried to reach out to the company and inquired about Kabul sauce. They couldn't help him that much, but they did provide a very important lead. They suggest that the flavor profile of this sauce must have been somewhere along the lines of Worcestershire sauce or soy sauce. That actually seems to check out if you look at this old advertisement from the period which lists Mogul sauce. Don't worry, it's just another name for Kabul sauce among very similar types of sauces. But that is not all. There is a second very important clue in a novel by author Alexei Tolstoy, who was alive in the late 19th century and describes a very fiery Kabul sauce in one of his works. So my best guess would be a mix of Worcestershire sauce with a glug of soy sauce and a few spritzes of Tabasco. I have absolutely no doubt that a fancy boy like Olivier would have made his own mayonnaise, and so will we. But I bet we're actually a lot faster than him. We start out with a yolk, a dollop of Dijon mustard, tarragon-infused white wine vinegar, a bit of water, and a lot of neutral flavor oil. And also we're topping this with a little bit of olive oil. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the super fast and easy blender mayo technique from this great book. Now we're mixing our fresh mayo with some imitation Kabul sauce and adding it into our salad base. And I almost forgot to add olives and capers, which is in our original guide recipe. Speaking of which, for garnish, the original recipe calls for lettuce, crawfish tails, and Landspeak. Now what the hell is Landspeak? Okay, this one's actually easy, it's just gelatinized meat juice. So earlier I had mixed a bag of instant gelatin with a jar of poultry stock and poured it into a tray. A few hours in the fridge later, this is what we get. Chicken jello. Cut that into cubes and make sure to keep it cold until we serve. Which is how we finally arrive at presentation. The recipe specifically calls for serving in a crystal bowl for some reason, so that's what we do. And now let's think like Lucien Oliver. Remember our goal? We want to impress the hottest influencers of the time. And so with a little bit of creative license, I believe this is along the lines of what Olivier himself would have done. First, we garnish this salad with a few of our tiny quail drumsticks, then followed by halved hard-boiled quail eggs and, as per recipe, crawfish tails. We're adding a few leaves of lettuce and a couple of these weird chicken jello cubes, which apparently really were a big thing back then. But finally, I want to make this unforgettable with a crown of caviar. What do you think? Could this be close to the original 1862 Olivier salad? We might never find out, because over the course of 1.5 centuries and at least 2 revolutions, this recipe has been simplified, modified, and adjusted to what's available countless times, and I think that's for the better. But what we can find out is if this recipe actually tastes any good. And for that, I will need somebody with a lot of experience in eating and cooking Olivier salad.
Что ты должна сделать? Есть прямо из этой миски?
Да.
И говорить по-английски стала.
Yes, please. Ну, вообще хорошо. Are you hungry?
Yes.
You're on my channel, my house, my rules.
Oh my god.
So this is the original 1862 salat Olivier recipe. Before you start, how much experience do you have eating salat Olivier?
All my life. If you would have only one dish for New Year's Eve, that would be salat Olivier.
So this is a very important dish for Russian culture.
Absolutely, it's iconic, and there are some variations of it with cucumber, without cucumber, with onion, without onion, with apple, without apple. It's also a little bit depends on the money. Usually you have peas in it, like from a can.
Are you ready to try it?
I am.
Take as much as you like.
Ready, steady, go. Woo. And
Oh, you're taking a bit of everything.
sure,
Okay.
yeah.
This is your salat Olivier portion.
The mayonnaise is good. You great grandmother used to say, how Can that be bad? It's so much good stuff in it. Like it very much. What are those little?
Aha, you found?
Capern?
Yes, you found the kapirsi.
Kapirsi.
Uh-huh.
It's great. I still like the chunks to be a little smaller, but it tastes great.
Tiny little quail drumstick.
Yep. That's really tender.
Good, isn't it?
Not a chicken, I can tell.
You know what it's supposed to be? Ryabichka.
Repchik.
Ryabchik. For you personally, is it better than the Soviet version or not?
No, it's just because it's just different. It's very, very nice. I do miss pickles the most. Probably would be ingredient I wished for. Wow. That would be my version.
With pickles.
This great combination plus a pickle.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No.
Thank you. Subscribe to the channel below, I guess.
Yes.